Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that Wuthering Waves, at least in JP, might have made a bit of a boo-boo releasing some information earlier than the rest of the regions. On Game 8 in JP, as we're seeing over here, which is a reputable website that I have confirmed based off of their EN page that doesn't actually do leaks, doesn't do any of that sort of stuff, has released a lot of information for 2.0 and specifically its sonata sets. And so what I wanted to do today was take a bit of an overview of some of these new additions and break down who some of the best users are going to be. Despite my looks, I don't actually understand Japanese, so I'm going to quickly refresh the page and then translate all of it into English. And then we can see from here what some of these new harmony, or really sonata sets, are going to do and who some of those best users are. So we're going to see here, the first sonata set is going to be translated as Frosted Heart and obviously applied to Glacio damage. The two-piece bonus for this set is going to be increased damage from resonance skills, and as we can imagine from the previews that we've seen of Carlotta's kit, specifically from IGN, she does a lot of these. And so with that, whenever your resonance liberation, I do believe resonance liberation is released, increase your own condensation or glacial damage and then increase the resonance skill damage that you're dealing as well. When we think about some of the potential users of this set, well, first of all, they're going to have to deal glacial damage. And unfortunately, there aren't really a lot of applicable users other than potentially Jeja or Ling Yang. Potentially Sanhua as well, but you're going to want her on more of a supportive set anyways. And so with that in mind, Ling Yang doesn't do a tremendous amount of resonance skill damage. Most of it is actually from basic attacks. And so what this means is that this set is probably only going to be mainly used on Carlotta, with characters like Ling Yang or DPS Jeja preferring the original Glacial Sonata set that we have that charges up from basic attacks and heavy attacks. So that's going to be the first set on this list over here, rather specific in its user, and it's pretty clear that it's going to be Carlotta. Next up, we're going to have Eternal Light, which is going to be focused on diffraction, or really in this case, Spectro. And so the two-piece bonus from this set is going to be increased Spectro damage, much like the existing one that activates on intro skills. The next bonus of this set is at 5 pieces, and when an enemy is inflicted with the noisy light effect, which I can imagine is probably the status effect that they're going to be releasing in 2.0 based off of those 4-star weapons that we've previously seen that amplify their own damage based off status effects, your own critical rate is going to increase. And so when an enemy is attacked with a certain amount of stacks of this new debuff that's going to be applied from spectral damage, your own spectral damage is going to increase as well on the user. And so this is definitely something that's very interesting, right? That's going to focus a lot on those new status effects that we haven't really seen full details of, but have seen synergized with those new 4-star weapons, the Poetry and Paine series. And so you can imagine that really any spectral damage dealer, right, that will be able to apply this effect, hopefully from repeated casts or repeated use of their abilities, could be applicable users. And so with that in mind, if you're using Spectral Rover, for example, as a bit more of a damage-oriented character, they benefit from critical rate, as well as Jinsei, another spectral damage main DPS who potentially might not have as much synergy with this noisy light effect that we're seeing here, but she could be a potential user as well. Her current Sonata set, however, the one that increases spectral damage by a flat 30 additional % whenever she uses an intro skill, that one is still probably potentially going to be her best in slot because she is really focused on burst damage rather than building up this effect as we're seeing here, building up this debuff and then, you know, eventually dealing damage there. However, she does have a bit of a buildup. You know, she has to use her resonance skill and then do a couple of her basic attacks to actually reach that point. And so this set might have a surprising amount of synergy with her as well. So with that in mind, there's definitely two very, very attribute damage focused sets over here. Now we're going to go ahead and view this next one, Midnight Veil. And that's going to be focused on disappearance or annihilation damage. Really, this just means havoc. And so with that in mind, the 2-piece bonus over here is going to be increased havoc damage. And when you have the 5-piece bonus, when you exit out with your final skill, or really your outro skill, it'll deal additional havoc damage to the surrounding enemies and then give the next incoming character an increased havoc damage boost. As you can imagine, it's pretty clear that Rocia from that IGN trailer is also going to be a havoc sub DPS that is meant to buff another character on the team. The two characters that she was demonstrated with were Camellia and Havoc Rover. And so with this in mind, some of the best potential users on the roster are obviously going to be Rocia herself, as well as Dan Jin, because Dan Jin obviously does havoc damage damage and has an amplification outro skill that focuses on havoc damage too. And so this could really be the set that closes the gap between potentially Sanhua and Danjin in Camellia team comps, as well as Havoc Rover team comps. But in all actuality, unless you're planning on using Havoc Rover maybe as like a dual DPS with Camellia that's going to buff her, it's probably not going to be the best set on the Havoc Rover main DPS. However, still a lot of potential here for this set, at least with one member of the roster, not really like these past two sets, right, that are clearly geared towards more of the newer additions. So with that in mind, those are the three sets that are going to have, you know, an attribute damage focus. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one, which is clearly a bit more general use case based off the fact that, well, it doesn't have like a color or an attribute allocated to it. It looks like it's a bit similar to Moonlit Clouds just from the icon that we're seeing here. So the first bonus that we're going to see is increased resonance efficiency. And based off of what we've seen from Moonlit Clouds, that probably means increased energy regen, which really only affects your ability to cast your Resonance Liberation, increases the energy regeneration there. So that's going to be the 2-piece bonus, really similar to Moonlit Clouds. And the 5-set bonus that we're going to be seeing is an increased damage dealt by cooperative attacks or coordinated attacks. And so whenever a coordinated attack is a critical hit, it increases the attack power of all the characters on the team. And so right off of the bat, you can imagine a lot of potential users here. You're gonna have Mortifi, who has coordinated attacks and works in Jion's team. You're gonna have Yinlin, who also has the coordinated attacks and then works very well with Zhang Liao. And then of course, Zheja, one of the only other characters with coordinated attacks that, you know, works in both the Jinxie team and, as we can see from the IGN demo, the Carlotta team as well. And so this set clearly has a lot of synergy with coordinated or with critical hits, with a very large crit ratio and a lot of investment on the character that's actually using it. And so it seems like a lot more of a late game build, a late game option that's going to both increase the damage that the character is actually dealing off field while also providing that buffing ability that we're seeing from Moonlit Clouds. However, we're not really sure what the actual damage numbers are yet. Obviously, the Heron, the Impermanence Heron, also provides a damage buff whenever an outro skill is used. And so this might be a way to help close the gap between certain sub DPS characters like Sanhua and Yinlin and Zheja, who, you know, are obviously dealing a lot more damage off field, but might not have the rotation time or the rotation speed that certain other characters on the roster might have. A last pick in the coordinated attack category is obviously Baizha as well as Yan Wu. However, these characters don't really deal a huge amount of damage with them, but there might be some potential synergy here, right? Because it looks like this is going to increase the attack power of multiple characters on the team, while Moonlit Clouds is going to increase only one character. So we'll see if this set stacks. I don't think it's going to stack. You're probably only going to want one of these on the team and then a rejuvenating glow on the other side of the equation. So that's going to be 4 Sonata sets, 4 very, very unique additions to the roster. The next one is going to be Tides Turning Vala. I'm pretty sure that's not what the actual translation is. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And this looks like it also going to have the same 2-piece bonus as both Moonlit Clouds and then Celestial Onslaught. And that's going to be obviously the increased resonance efficiency, more ability to cast your liberation, higher energy regen. The 5-piece set increases the character's attack power. And when you have energy regeneration that exceeds a certain value, it increases all of the damage dealt by the equipped character. And so this is a really, really interesting set because we're typically seeing resonance or resonance efficiency allocated towards characters or sets that are really a lot more supportive, but this one seems to be focused on a character that likes to cast a liberation a lot and then also wants to be the person dealing damage as well. So we might be seeing in the future, if you're familiar with Genshin Impact, a character similar to Raiden who wants to be a main damage dealer but also wants to build a lot of energy regen. And so this might mean that we have a character in the future that wants for the 3 costs energy regen as their best in slot to actually reach this value and then get that general all attribute damage increase for the character. And so when you consider the trade-off, right, energy regen versus attribute damage, that gap is pretty wide. And so we're probably going to need a very, very specific kit to leverage all of this power. When I think about current characters on the roster that might want this, not a lot of them come to mind because most characters that do want energy regen and do want to spam their liberation, they're not really damage dealers. They're more so in the sub DPS or support category, right? Characters like Shorekeeper, characters like Mortifi, etc., etc. And they're not meant to be doing all of the damage on their team, and they're typically used to buff others. And so this is definitely a Sonata set that I don't think is going to have a large amount of impact at the very start of 2.0, but this almost guarantees that we're going to be seeing a more energy regen focused main damage dealer in the future. And so when you're farming these sets, when you're farming all these different sets, I would say the priorities are obviously you're going to want a Frosted Heart if you're going for Carlotta. Eternal Light might not be something that actually works with the current roster, so I'd hold off on that. Midnight Veil if you're farming for Rosha, or you want to really build out your Danjin as a bit more of a supportive character. And then obviously Celestial Ansam as the most general use set in this update, because there's going to be a lot of existing characters who will be able to benefit from this a lot, assuming that the numbers are balanced and that it clearly has some big differentiators from Moonlit Clouds, which, you know, is the premier sub DPS set at the moment. So with that in mind, I would really focus on Celestial Ansam as the main farming object after you've got all of your Frosted Hearts ready to go for Carlotta. So with that, hopefully this short overview was helpful, and we'll be able to inform you on what you're going to want to farm from all of those new, I believe it's over 20 plus echoes that are being introduced in version 2.0. But with that, hopefully that was helpful. Let me know what you all think, and yeah, have a good one. Peace out.